How about that Supergirl teaser, everyone? Whoa. Supergirl's gonna be such a different vibe than Superman. Welcome back, everyone. We are here to talk about Supergirl, which is, I think, a movie that a lot of us have been hyped for, and I think some people have been nervous about it because of how Supergirl appeared in Superman. I wanted to come in here and kind of break down this trailer for you, but before I do, I want to know, what was your favorite thing that you saw in the teaser, and what are you looking forward to, or what are you worried about when it comes to this movie? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you're wondering where my reaction is to this trailer, I did do a reaction to this teaser. You can find that over on my other channel where a lot of my reaction content is these days. That's over at Amanda McKnight Official, so make sure you go check that out. So let's talk a little bit about what this movie is based on. So Supergirl is actually based on a comic called Woman of Tomorrow. If you're not familiar with it, it is a pretty quick read. It's only an 8-issue limited series written by Tom King with art by Bill Key Evely. And this series was nominated for a Best Limited Series award at the Eisners. It's kind of a big deal. Eisners is like the comic book award show. And I think that speaks to how beloved and how great this limited series is. It made such an impact that they are using it to base this movie off of. And if you aren't familiar with Woman of Tomorrow, the idea of it, the gist of the story, is that we follow this character who's named Ruthie Mary Knoll. I don't know if that's how we're going to be saying the name in the movie, so pardon me if the movie is out at this point and you're watching this video. I've only read it, so we'll see if that pronunciation holds up. She is a girl in space who, what happened is, her dad was killed by this villain who is known as Krem of the Yellow Hills, and she is on a quest for vengeance. She meets up with Supergirl and they end up teaming up. In the trailer, we actually see Ruthie, and she has what I believe is probably going to be her father's sword, and she is seemingly on that quest for vengeance. We also start off this trailer with a really interesting shot of a newspaper article that Krypto is relieving himself on. And the newspaper page that we see has two sort of articles on it. The main article, the headline is, Superman saving people from a nuclear reactor breaking down. And then the smaller article is Supergirl saving cats, which I think pretty aptly captures the vibe of what this movie is going to be like. The idea is, for Supergirl, she's been through a lot, and yet I'm sure when she comes to Earth, everyone sees her as Superman's little cousin, which is, of course, a bit ironic and strange for Kara, as she is usually the older cousin, and based on what we've seen in this trailer, I think that's the way we're going to go with it as well. She's obviously going to link up with Ruthie, I think, and Krem appears here. He looks a lot different in comparison to his comic book appearance, where he's just kind of a shirtless guy from what I've seen in the comics. And in the movie, he is giant and kind of is giving me a bit of a Hellraiser vibe, which I like. He looks very intimidating. This trailer also has a bit of a Guardians of the Galaxy feel to it, although it is important to note that this movie is not actually being directed by James Gunn. James Gunn is, of course, still the person overseeing all of the DC Studios productions, but this specific movie is being directed by Craig Giuseppe, who did the movies Lars and the Real Girl, Cruella, Pam and Tommy, which actually is not a movie, it's a TV series. He also did the movie Dumb Money, and he also has directed, I think, a couple episodes of Your Friends and Neighbors, which a meme with John Hamm is currently trending everywhere from that show right now. I love it. I need to do some kind of short on that. He's done a lot of different things, which makes me kind of excited, honestly, for him for this next chapter of what he's going to be creating, because I think this movie is going to be really different for him as a director. The movie is also going to be written by Anna Nogueira. I hope I'm saying her name right. I apologize if I'm not. Who's relatively new on the scene when it comes to writing. In fact, this will be her first feature-length film that she's written. She's actually working on 4 that are supposed to be coming out soon, so I don't know if Supergirl will be the first one out, but I'm very curious to see how this goes. I definitely think think the premise for it is great, and it being based off of Tom King's limited series, I think is a good direction to go with. So hopefully it's a good start on her writing career. She's only written one other thing, and that was a short that she was also in, because she's also an actress. And it's not abnormal for actors to also be writers, or for actors to do other things. So I'm not really concerned about her being an actress and a writer. I'm a little nervous about her being new, but it just means I don't really have anything to go off of, which isn't really good or bad. It's just I have nothing to go off of. Getting back to what we see in the trailer, we also get a hint at Lobo, who we've all been excited to see. This, of course, is a role that Jason Momoa has always wanted to play, and we know it's happening now, and we only get a little whisper of Lobo here. And it's very interesting that Lobo appears, because I don't think he's in Woman of Tomorrow. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's in there. However, I believe Tom King's original pitch for Woman of Tomorrow was that it was going to be a team up with Lobo and Kara. And obviously, instead, it's a team up with Kara and Ruthie, which is still cool, but it's really neat that he kind of wanted to base it off of this odd team up of these two characters. If you don't know Lobo, Lobo is a very famous character from DC Comics. He's kind of a character that is created to parody Wolverine. However, he is also a space bounty hunter. So he's very weird, he's very crazy. As we see in the trailer, he has a cigar in his mouth, and that is a classic thing. Lobo constantly is smoking cigars. Very akin to Wolverine back when he smoked. Before we got rid of that, he doesn't smoke anymore. Smoking is bad, kids. Don't smoke. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think with Lobo, probably what we'll see, if they're going in the direction that kind of Tom King initially wanted to explore with this limited series, is that we could see Lobo team up with Kara and join this group. And it could be like Ruthie, Kara, and Lobo, which I think would be really fun. And obviously Krypto, who has a moment where he looks really rough in this trailer, and I'm really worried for Krypto. That could be in reference to what happens in the comic, because in the comic there is actually a fight, I believe near the beginning, where Krypto gets kind of messed up by Krem. So that could be what we see here, sadly. But don't worry, I'm sure Krypto will be fine. Krypto is Krypto, and he must be protected at all costs, as we know. There's also some interesting stuff when it comes to the characterization of Supergirl in this, which was something that I touched on at the beginning of this video, and I want to get back to that. A lot of people have been concerned, I think, about, party girl Kara and what is this vibe that they're doing with Kara. But you have to remember that for Kara, up to this point, she's probably had a pretty messed up life. Now, when we think of Clark, when we think of Kal-El, he came to Earth when he was a baby. So he doesn't really know a ton about what happened on Krypton. He was raised on Earth, and he was raised by the Kents, and he has this very positive outlook on life. Kara has been through some shit at this point. And I think it was pretty recent for her, based on the flashback that we see in the teaser to Argo City. Argo City was Kara's city, whereas Superman is from Kandor. And Kandor ends up getting shrunk down and bottled by Brainiac in the comics. However, when it comes to Argo City, what happened to it is, I think, worse than the fate of Krypton. Argo City was a city that was prepared for the end of Krypton. Jor-El obviously was trying to warn everyone about the destruction of Krypton being inevitable, and as a result of that, his younger brother, Zor-El, took action and made preparations to bubble Argo City in the event of Krypton being destroyed, which is what happened, and Argo City survived that. However, they did not have enough resources to survive too long past that point. They tried to reach out for help during the Prime Earth continuity, which is the current continuity we find ourselves in the comics, and they were unable to find anyone to come to their aid. So, if you can imagine, it's kind of worse, because they didn't have the resources to keep going. It was a very sad and tragic end, and Kara, as we see in the flashback, at this point, is older. In fact, this may have been as recent as a year or two ago that she would have experienced this. Because of the way space travel works, by the time Kara gets to Earth, she is still the age that she was when Krypton completely fell apart, and Argo City, shortly after that time, also fell apart. And she is actually older than Clark is, but because he came to Earth when he was younger, he grew up on Earth, and because she was traveling through space, she is not really aged. So that's why Kara appears younger, but is actually technically older. It looks like we're going to be sticking with that origin for her, which I like. And it looks like because of this, she will have fully remembered everything that happened on Krypton and how devastating it was to lose the rest of the planet and then slowly watch all of her people die of starvation, probably, I think is what we're gonna see. I don't know exactly what we're gonna do in the movie, but I don't think it's gonna be good. As we hear her say in the trailer when she's explaining to Ruthie, based on how it's laid out in the teaser, I don't know how it's gonna be cut in the movie, but she says it would have been better. God was not so merciful that we basically died in a day. Instead, we died slow. It was bad. It was a bad time. And when she talks about how 23, which confirming the age of Kara again in the teaser is 23 years old, is going to be a good year for her. That could be because, as she says, you know, it's not a very high bar to get over. It could be because 22 may have been the destruction of Krypton for Kara. It could have been because 22 was the destruction of Krypton for Kara. And shortly after the destruction of Argo City. Of course, in the comics, not everyone is dead. In fact, Zor-El does survive, and then he goes on to become a cyborg, but that's a tale for another video. If you want to know the wacky story of Zor-El in the comics, let me know in the comments, and we can talk about it if you're interested, because it's pretty wacky. We also see in this teaser that Kara does confirm that she and Superman are the only Kryptonians left. She does say when she's asked about her powers that it's a small party of two. I also really like this characterization of Kara because it makes sense that she would be so messed up and so messy. I don't think of her as a party girl. I actually think of her more as like a sad, lost girl. She talks about this idea of how Superman sees the world and says, you know, Superman sees the good in everyone. I see the truth, implying that instead of having this optimistic look on life, she has more of a realistic look on life, perhaps a more cynical look on life. I think Kara is just more of a realist. She sees things as they are. She sees the good, she sees the bad, and she's seen some pretty bad things happen. And I think that has affected the way that she lives her life, alone in space, kind of drifting is what it seems like, kind of looking for purpose. And I think she's going to find it in Ruthie, and it's going to bring her into this place where she will rise up to become the hero that we know her as, which I'm excited for. I think this whole teaser looks very cool. I think there's lots of little details in here that are giving us hints as to what the story will be. And I don't know if you caught the end of that with Supergirl basically taking a turret and turning it into a ball on a chain to take everyone around her out. But I think this is going to be an epic movie for action. And I would say if you would like to treat yourself to watching that and seeing just how cool it looks, watch it in the slowest speed possible that you can on YouTube, because it looks insane. I obviously combed through this trailer on the slowest speed to see what I could kind of see in here to expand upon for you guys, and that's mostly what I got. So if there was anything that I missed or anything that you noticed or anything more that you would like me to expand upon, let me know down in the comments below. And maybe Woman of Tomorrow will be a contender for my comic book club over on Patreon next month. We're going to be starting a new comic book club pretty soon. I'm reading Batman Catwoman right now, and that'll be coming to a close. I think probably next month we'll be wrapping that one, so soon I will have to decide what I want to read with everybody next. And I really feel like Woman of Tomorrow would be a great one to go through, especially as we prepare for this movie, which is coming out next summer. So, hey, I'm hyped. That's all I have for this one. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you down in the comments. And until next time, friends, stay nerdy. Bye. And if you like when I talk about comics, you need to check this out.